Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Okay, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are talking about why marathon training and weight loss don't always mix. You might notice that I am hesitant to say that they never mix, that they shouldn't mix, that they never ever mix or anything like that. But just why they don't always mix, some things to consider, just, want to dive into this very hot topic today to give you a little bit of perspective, give you some examples, and just sort of unpack this topic a bit and help you understand why you see so much conflicting advice and information out there on the subject of weight loss and marathon training. Now, I'm talking about marathon training, but I don't specifically mean like only training for a 26.2 mile race. This could be anybody who is training for a distance event. Could be a half marathon, an ultra marathon, maybe it's a triathlon, whatever it might be. And also coming into this training plan with a goal of weight loss. And the reason that I really want to unpack this today is because there's kind of two sides to this that you might see out there on the World Wide Web, and definitely two sides that I see really consistently. Part of it is just what my algorithm is probably feeding to me, and maybe you're seeing some of the same. You've got the perspective of the sports dietitians, the coaches, some coaches like myself, and you'll see a lot of people who are consistently saying and posting and sharing that like you do not try to lose weight while marathon training. Like you just don't do it. Huge no-no. Absolutely not. Never, ever, ever try to lose weight while you're marathon training. Or you also see sometimes that people will say that you should just assume that you're going to gain some weight while you're marathon training. Like there are some people that I've seen who are like, yeah, of course, like absolutely you're going to gain weight while you're marathon training. This is just part of the whole process. I don't agree with that 100%. Like if this happens to you and you're fine with it, like it's all good. But it shouldn't be an assumption that everyone's going to gain weight during marathon training. The same way it shouldn't be assumed that marathon training and weight loss are automatically at odds with each other. So you've got that sort of side of things, but then you've also got the other side of the coin where there's a lot of people, and this might include some coaches, this might include some running influencers, a lot of people who actually promote marathon training and marathon running as like the perfect weight loss plan. Like what could be better? And in my conversations with runners, of course, the clients that I coach, the people who come to work with me either in my one-on-one programs or in my Fuel Train Recover Club, my online program for runners, one of the most frequent goals that runners seem to set, one of the conversations that I'm having time and time and time again with runners is that they've got a big race coming up. They're starting to train for a big race. And at the same time, they want to lose some weight. And on the surface, this really seems like it should be a no-brainer. Like if you kind of think about it from the perspective of what we all have learned and been told so many times about exercise and weight loss and calorie deficits and all of that, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be running all of these extra miles. I'm going to be moving more, burning thousands of calories a week running. Should be obvious that this should make it very, very easy to see weight loss as I increase my training volume. And even if I don't make any changes to my diet whatsoever, I'm automatically going to be in a great big calorie deficit because I'm going to increase my running, increase the calories that I'm burning. If I don't eat more, then bada bing, bada boom. We all know that a calorie deficit is what's required for weight loss. So this seems like it should be really cut and dry, really easy. Now, of course, there are some people who it does seem to be that seamless or that simple. They start running a little bit more, maybe they start running a lot more. They don't really change their diet or not in a way that's intentional. Like any change that they make to their eating is just unintentional, just kind of just happening on its own very organically. But as they get closer to their race, the scale goes down. Now, when they finish that race, if they are then running less, the scale might go back up. Who's to say? But there are some people that it does sort of seem to work out that way for. However, today, we are not here to talk about those people or here to talk to those people, because chances are, if you're one of those people, you might not be listening to this episode. But if you are someone who has consistently seen the scale go up, go down, go up, go down, in response to how much you happen to be training at any given point in time, then just know that that is okay. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. It can be explained, of course, by this shift in energy balance that we're seeing with running more, etc. It's not a big mystery why this might be happening to you. But if it's something that you want to change, maybe you don't want to lose weight when you're running more, because there are a lot of people out there who don't want to see weight loss and actually need to really be intentional about increasing their calories when they start running more. If you're one of those people, obviously that's something that we can work on. That's something that we can change. If you're somebody who just wants to understand like what's happening behind the scenes with my body, with my hunger signals, with my appetite, all this stuff, then obviously you're more than welcome to keep listening, even if weight loss and marathon training isn't a specific goal that you happen to have at the moment. So it seems like a no-brainer. We're training for a longer, bigger race than we've been doing. We're running more miles. We're burning thousands of calories per week running, potentially. What might actually happen? So what are some of the things that can happen when we increase our running volume? Well, the first thing that can happen is we get hungry. You may have experienced this. I actually very recently just experienced this, getting back into a regular running routine after having a set of twins at the end of last year. Ran a 5K race a few months ago and have signed up for my first post-baby 10K race coming up next month. And even just that small shift of adding an extra day of running per week and a few extra miles per week, like even I noticed with this very, I'll say pretty modest increase in training volume, I definitely noticed that I was significantly hungrier than like a month ago when I was, just running 3 days a week and a little bit less. And it wasn't like I doubled my mileage or anything like that. Like it was a pretty modest increase, but it was definitely a noticeable shift in my hunger level. So I thought that was very interesting. So yes, we get hungry. Physiologically, with an increase in energy output, we are likely to see a corresponding increase in appetite, right? We are burning more calories, we need more energy, so the brain is going to send out more hunger signals, right? Because at the end of the day, our brain does not want us to be in an energy deficit, right? Despite us wanting maybe to be in an energy deficit, the human brain has evolved and adapted over many, many, many years to not want us to be in an energy deficit, because we don't perform and function at our best in an energy deficit. And, an energy deficit, as far as the brain is concerned, is a fast track to us starving. And that's the worst thing that can happen, right? Even though we want to sort of self-impose these low energy, low calorie sort of environments on us, our body really fights that. And our brain really sort of wants to combat being in this big energy deficit. So we get these, more hunger signals being sent out in response to increasing our calorie output, the energy that we're burning. And this is not a bad thing. Like, I don't want this to be seen as a battle that we have to fight, a disagreement between us and our brains, us and our bodies, and something that we have to combat or fight. Because I think that when we have a mindset of getting along with ourselves, getting along with our bodies, appreciating what our bodies are doing and why they're doing it, and have this understanding, we can then work with our body, work with our brain to really be more, I'll say, at peace and cohesive with what's happening physiologically. And I think it just makes it so much easier, because we are not going to change or trick or modify our physiology, without some other, usually pharmaceutical things coming into play. We're not really gonna do that on our own. And so if we can just understand and we can kind of work with our bodies a little bit more, then I think we're on the right track. So that's what's happening physiologically. We get an increase in those hunger hormones, those hunger signals that are sending us out to go find more food. and especially quick energy, right? Tasty things, high calorie foods, right? Few people are sitting around craving broccoli when they're really hungry, right? We want ice cream, chocolate, chips, pizza, French fries, donuts, I don't know, all that good stuff. Now, the other thing that can happen is not only are we physiologically finding that we have more hunger signals, but second to that, psychologically, we can start to make some adjustments to our eating. Again, adjustments that maybe we make them intentionally, but sometimes not so. Like it can be very, very subliminal and very, very sneaky, I guess I'll say. So maybe you've had this conversation with yourself before, right? I ran 10 miles today, so I can have this little treat. Or, oh my gosh, I just did my biggest, longest run ever. So, like, I need all these calories, right? You're always hearing us sport dietitians sort of bang on about how many calories you need as a runner, how much fuel you need as a runner. Like, oh my gosh, like you need to be fueling yourself properly. You need to eat way more than you think you do and stuff like that. So, we get all this messaging and then we go and do this like big long run and we think, oh my goodness, like I really need like as many calories as I can get my hands on right now. But I want to just like shift and give you a little bit of perspective about what that might actually mean. So, on average, running burns an average of about 100 calories per mile. Now, you as an individual probably burn more or less than this amount because it depends on things like body size, your efficiency as a runner. Lots of other factors are going to come into play here with how many calories you burn per mile. But it's a nice round number, so I'm going to use it because I like nice round numbers, easy math that I can do in my head as I am sitting here recording this podcast for you. So, okay, you run 10 miles, you're burning 100 calories a mile. That is 1,000 calories of running, right? Like, holy moly, that's a lot of calories, right? So afterwards, you are starving. Let's say that you are trying to lose weight while you train for this race. You have like maybe a banana before you go out the door and start running. Maybe you have nothing, but maybe you have a banana. Banana's about 100 calories. That's 1 mile of running, by the way. So afterwards, you are ravenous. So you're like, well, you know what? Like I just burned 1,000 calories. I need to get some fuel in. I am starving and I am craving a treat. I want something delicious. So you're going to stop for some fast food. So you go and you get a burger, fries, and a milkshake. Now, I just looked up a very popular fast food restaurant. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of variation depending on the size of the burger, size of the fries, size of the milkshake, etc. But the one that I looked up was 1,680 calories in that meal. So what I'm telling you is that you just ran for, maybe at the low end, an hour and a half, maybe at the high end, 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer than 2 hours to run those 10 miles. And that single meal of a burger, fries, and a milkshake that we ate in probably under 10 minutes was significantly more calories than what was burned on that entire run. I know, right? Or maybe you're the kind of person, and like, I think this resonates with me certainly, and it probably resonates with a lot of you. Maybe like on a Saturday night, you did your long run, you want to relax and unwind, order some pizza, have a glass of wine, 3 slices of, your typical kind of restaurant pizza, and 2 5-ounce glasses of red wine. And I'm talking like 5 ounces. You go measure it out. It's not that big. Certainly not the size of the pour that you get in most restaurants these days. Even that alone is a little over 1,000 calories. And by most people's standards, like that's not a crazy amount of food, right? Like that's not like a big heaping plate piled high with a huge amount of food, right? Visually speaking. So yes, we burned 1,000 calories running, and it took us several hours to do so. But it's amazing how fast the calories from some of these foods can add up. And I wanted to give this perspective, having this conversation on this podcast today, definitely a little bit of a tricky conversation to navigate, because on the one hand, I do think it's important for people to understand where the calories in their food are coming from and to just have a bit of like clarity around where maybe things are out of balance. But I'm not sharing this because I want to scare you away from having fast food or pizza or wine or milkshakes or French fries or whatever in your diet on occasion. And I don't want to demonize certain foods either. Like I didn't pick and choose burgers, fries, and a milkshake and pizza and wine because I hate them and I don't want you to eat them or anything like that. I'm just sort of sharing this so that if you're listening and you're struggling, you kind of understand where this imbalance might be coming from. Like, why is it that I'm doing so much running, yet I am not seeing any changes on the scale? This is, this is what I'm eating. This is the calories that I'm taking in. And maybe mathematically speaking, it seems to add up to the right amount. But if you can sort of understand and think about the timing of that fuel, we're eating all of those calories after the run. And that might be a little bit of a problem in and of itself. So again, I'm not sharing this because I want you to feel bad or not include those things in your diet ever. But I just want you to understand that, it takes a lot of effort to go and burn all those calories. And it often doesn't take nearly as much effort to eat more of those calories back. And that's just the reality of the food environment that we live in. And that's just, where we live, the world we live in. That's just kind of the reality of restaurant meals and alcohol and stuff like that. Now, you probably have heard the little sort of trope out there that you can't outrun a bad diet, sort of quote unquote. Now, of course, neither of these diets that I just described are bad in any way. They're not a bad meal. It's not a bad day. It's nothing like that. I do truly, truly believe that all foods can fit. However, this is basically what we're talking about. Like, this is sort of that you can't outrun a bad diet sort of ideology obviously comes from conversations about weight loss. From my perspective, I think it's assumed that it comes from conversations about weight loss. And, I think that that's really kind of what we're meaning by that and what that little nugget sort of means. So that's that. Now, maybe you're listening to this episode and you're like, Steph, like, I am not new to this. Girl, I know running more miles does not mean that I can just like go wild with my nutrition. 1,000 calories of food adds up really quickly. And, I have to be more careful than that, even when I'm doing big, long runs. Like, I am so unbelievably careful. I don't budge on my calories. I don't have treats, nothing. Now, if this is you and you are very, very tuned in and dialed into your diet and you have been extremely careful, like you haven't, the foods that I just talked about, the pizza, the wine, the milkshake, the French fries, all that kind of stuff, you do not touch that with a 10-foot pole. You have not gone near that stuff you don't remember the last time. You're doing all the right things, but you are just absolutely stuck and the scale is not budging. Rather than this being a matter of that energy imbalance coming from, this eat less, move more kind of concept that's just sort of going off the rails a little bit, you might be instead struggling with low energy availability, or even more seriously, relative energy deficiency in sport. REDS is what we call it. So we have LEA, low energy availability, or we have REDS. What is happening here? So basically, low energy availability is when we are not taking in enough calories to support both our body's basal metabolic requirements, our body's basic demands, as well as the calories we need for exercise, right? The calories that we burn running those 10 miles, running those 15 miles, whatever it might be. So what happens is that energy output goes down. Our energy burn goes down because we are not going to just keep chugging along, burning calories at the same rate forever and ever and ever and ever, right? Our brain has evolved to save us from ourselves. Our brain has evolved to not let us starve. And part of that is we start to conserve energy. We start to conserve calories. So if we estimate that you're burning 100 calories per mile of running, you as an individual might be burning a lot less than that, as well as you will have a reduction in your resting metabolic rate. So reduction in the calories you burn at rest. This also means that the quality of your workouts might suffer. So you might be doing a lot more walking than running on a long run, right? Again, if you're not running, you're not burning the calories that we estimate of running. Or we can't hit our target paces on things like speed workouts, or you're just kind of dropping off. Like you can't finish the workout. If you're supposed to do, 8 or 10 by 200, 400 meter repeats, you can't, like you are just by the end, you're jogging those repeats. You're not hitting the paces. Maybe you can't finish the last couple of intervals. You're just quite literally running out of gas. So to kind of go back to our 10-mile, 1,000-calorie run that we've been using as our very nice, easy round numbers today. Let's say you run 10 miles. Now, perhaps you ended up having to walk a lot more of that than run. That's number one. Maybe though your Garmin still says that you burned 1,000 calories during that run. Again, super, super rough estimate. So then you turn around and you go ahead and you eat 1,000 calories of nutritious food, right? Like again, you're the kind of person who you don't budge on your calories, you don't budge on your diet. You're very regimented and making sure that you're eating really nutritious things. You're getting in your lean proteins, you're having some whole grains, starchy vegetables, fruits, healthy fats. Eating 1,000 calories of that like really good nutritious stuff. That's wonderful, right? I mean, you're getting in a good balance of macronutrients, you're getting in vitamins and minerals, all that stuff that we need in order to like recover and fuel properly. But talking about weight loss today. So what if on that run, instead of burning 1,000 calories like your Garmin estimated, you actually only burned about 700? So instead of now being in an energy balance, we're actually in a surplus because we've been under fueling. Right? So our energy output goes down when we have low energy availability. We are not burning the calories that we think we are. The estimates are too high. So we go ahead and we eat in what should be an energy balance, but we're not in an energy balance. We're actually now in a surplus. Now imagine, maybe you burned a lot fewer calories on that run than what you thought you did. And this is a day when we go ahead and we get the blizzard, or we get the Big Mac meal, or we order the pizza, or whatever it might be. And I think it's easier and easier to see kind of as we get through this episode, like a runner might be struggling and where some of the issues might be coming up, because it seems like all these things should be in balance and the math should be mathing, but it isn't. It's often a lot of this behind the scenes stuff, like the hunger signals that are increased when we are running more. And sometimes they're not always perfectly in line with the actual increase in calories that we need. It could be, again, this issue of low energy availability or REDs that is really causing us to struggle. Now, of course, recovery can also suffer. And runners who have low energy availability or REDs can see a loss of lean muscle mass over time. So rather than seeing gains from strength training, we're actually not building and maintaining muscle the way we want to. So because of that, and because of the metabolic adaptations that take place that are negatively impacting our basal metabolic rate, we can then have a harder time losing weight. Never mind all the other symptoms that we see with REDs, whether it's gut issues, hormone issues, sleep issues, all the things. There's lots of really negative impacts that we see from being in too big of an energy deficit, not eating enough to fuel our training. So you may also not necessarily find yourself kind of at one extreme or the other. The runner who is running more and is super, super hungry all the time, and you're just eating way more than what you're burning because you just maybe didn't really realize it. Or on the flip side of that, maybe you're not somebody who's really actively restricting your energy intake. You're trying to be careful, you're trying to be cautious of how much you're eating, but you're finding yourself not so much at one extreme, like neither end of the spectrum that I'm describing, but sort of somewhere in the middle. And sometimes we can wind up in what we call a binge restrict cycle, where you can be really good, and I'll say quote unquote good, eating in a deficit all day, all week, maybe for a little bit longer than that sometimes, but eventually that dam sort of breaks and you feel yourself getting out of control around food. It might be the end of the day, the evening, when you start to get really snacky around supper time or in the evenings. It might be on the weekends. Maybe you've got that like treat day or cheat day sort of planned, and it just ends up being a bit of a free for all. We should do an episode about cheat days. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about cheat days. Maybe that's a good episode to do down the road. But you feel yourself getting out of control around food. Like you're eating past the point of being satisfied and past the point of being full. The food no longer is giving you something positive. It is feeling negative. You're not enjoying it. You're not feeling good after you eat it. It's too much. Just that relationship with food is feeling really dysfunctional and disconnected. So we might be, in an energy surplus whether this is intentional, I'll say sort of unintentional, we just didn't realize, how easy it is to eat back so many of those extra calories. Maybe it is completely unintentional because we are in that metabolic adaptation state, low energy availability or REDS. Or maybe we're kind of caught in the middle. We're bouncing back and forth. We're sort of in this binge restrict cycle where we just can't seem to get it right. And we're super frustrated. We're really struggling. Our running performance might be suffering significantly. Our motivation to even run anymore might be really struggling and really suffering. Either way, none of the stuff that I described is really ideal, especially if you are a runner who wants to see weight loss, more specifically body fat loss, while you're running a higher mileage. So, what should we do instead? If we want to see changes in our weight or body composition while we are training for a race, where should we start? Like, what are the steps that we should go through in order to really optimize things? Number one, and I cannot stress this enough, is focusing on the meals that you're eating around your training schedule. So really zoom out from there. And obviously the other meals that you eat throughout the day are important too. But number one is focusing on the timing of your meals around your training. This is going to be fueling up before you run, a really good fuel up beforehand. So you aren't the runner who's having a banana before you run 10 miles, no intra-workout fuel. You finish, you're starving, and you just cannot get your hands on something quick enough, easy enough, fast enough. And again, going for those really high reward, high calorie density types of things. We want to fuel up well beforehand, have really good intra-run nutrition, and then we want to plan a high protein meal for after our workouts so that we are getting those recovery nutrients that we need. We're getting improved performance in recovery. We are also then not seeing excessive cravings or hunger as the day goes on. Better appetite regulation, and of course, getting in the right nutrients that we need to actually build and maintain muscle while supporting better workout performance. So that's number one is just, making sure that pre, intra, and post run nutrition is of utmost importance and something that we really are focusing on and planning for on a regular basis. Now, the second thing that I want you to do is definitely include some fun foods and flexibility. So again, I wasn't sharing that calorie information, those numbers, that stuff, because I want you to cut out anything like that and have no fun foods and no flexibility in your life. But I really want to shift away from seeing running as a way to earn calories or to burn off something you ate previously, right? I don't want it to be this transactional thing that ends up really taking over your life. And I also don't want you to say to yourself, well, I can't eat that thing. I can't go to that restaurant, can't go for ice cream, whatever, because I didn't run enough today, because that's not helpful either. And again, these are things that just erode our relationship with food and exercise over time. The other reason is that energy balance really isn't a perfect science. And as I sort of demonstrated with my example, we don't know with 100% certainty how many calories you're burning on a daily basis. So to try and adapt your eating to be perfectly in line with how many calories your watch or your app or something says you burned based on this activity level, I just think you end up chasing something it's like trying to catch a cloud, right? You're chasing something that you're never going to quite grasp or never quite capture, because that's just not how the human body works. We aren't math. So instead, I don't think it's always harmful to track calories and sort of have a sense of how much nutrition you need, have a sense of what that energy balance looks like for you, instead of it being a day-to-day thing that we're trying to chase a specific different calorie target day to day. Instead, we want to have, an overall sense of our overall training volume throughout the week. And of course, we want to have that be fairly consistent. We don't want some weeks we're running, 10 hours, and the next week we're running 2, and we're up and down all over the place. I do think consistency is really key here. But rather than it being a specific number that we're targeting on a day-to-day basis and trying to change and adapt and alter that number every single day, instead we want to have a range of calories and sort of a general idea of what that energy balance looks like for us, and be fairly close to it, but not trying to be so specific, so detail oriented with it that we're just going to drive ourselves crazy for no good reason, because it isn't a perfect science. The other thing that I want you to do, if you are listening to this as somebody who is struggling, is I want you to be patient. And this is obviously, honestly, the hardest thing. Body composition changes take time, way more time than we want them to take. And if you've done a lot of diets over the years, you've kind of done like maybe you've had some experiences with low carb eating, stuff like that, where you do see a significant drop in weight very quickly right off the bat. This is shifts in muscle glycogen, shifts in water weight. This is not real body fat loss that's happening that quickly. But I think it really sort of plants a seed that if something's going to work, it should work right off the bat. Like we should immediately see those changes and see those results. The reality is that's just not the case. So instead, if we're talking about real changes, real body composition changes, real body fat loss, it takes time, and often way more time than we want it to take or expect that it's going to take. But if we can just be patient, if we can focus on doing sort of the right things, I'll say, for performance, then we turn around and we get those same dividends being paid into better body composition too. If you're someone who is in a state of low energy availability, or you do have REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, and those metabolic adaptations that go along with it, right? Reduced calorie output, reduced resting metabolic rate, as well as a reduction in calories burned from exercise. These are not things, unfortunately, that we can solve just over the course of a 12-week marathon training cycle. Like it's very, very difficult. I will never say impossible, but I'm close to saying impossible to be able to, correct low energy availability or REDS, get someone's metabolism, back up to where it ideally should be to sort of correct these metabolic adaptations that have taken place, as well as get you ready for a race in only 3 to 4 months. Like even me just saying it out loud, like I hope that it kind of comes across like how difficult or challenging that can be. I want you, if you're sitting here, you're listening to this, and this is exactly where you're at right now, what I want you to understand is that yes, theoretically, technically, it is possible to lose weight while training for a marathon. People do it all the time, right? Without even thinking about it, without even trying, whatever. They just run more, and whatever they do with their diet, they do with their diet, and they happen to see some weight loss along the way. Cool. Should you as an individual try to lose weight while training for a marathon? And I mean this in the sense of like, I'm going to run a marathon without eating more, and I'm going to create this great big calorie deficit, and it's a no-brainer, I'm going to lose weight. Maybe not. I don't know if that's the best idea for most of us out there. But I will say this. Optimizing your fueling strategy, that means figuring out what that right amount of energy is for your needs, for your training volume, for your body, all the things. Your right macronutrient distribution. How much of those calories should be coming from protein versus carbs versus fat? What does that look like over the course of the day? How do we time your meals to optimize your fueling for training, better performance, better recovery, getting enough of the right vitamins and minerals? Doing all those things will lead to better performance, right? A proper, personalized, optimal nutrition strategy will lead to better performance. It will also lead to improved strength, improved endurance, and of course, faster training recovery, which means a reduction in injury risk and a better ability to handle a higher volume of training, right? So like if you don't need as much downtime, recovery time, rest time in between workouts, you can run longer without getting fatigued and super sore. Like if you can just train more because you're fueling properly, now you have more capacity to become a better, stronger, faster runner, right? More mileage is generally a good thing when we're looking at running performance, provided you can recover from that increased volume. And this is where nutrition comes into play. So in turn, all of these things, that proper fueling strategy that I described, will ideally lead to an improvement in body composition, right? Because if we're strength training, if we're doing the speed work, we are fueling for recovery, we should see an increase in muscle mass and potentially a corresponding loss of some body fat along the way. Again, if that energy balance is within a pretty tight range. So the scale, though, might not move, right? We are building muscle. We are losing body fat. If we gain 5 pounds of muscle and lose 5 pounds of body fat, the scale will not move, right? 5 pounds is 5 pounds. But this is where you might see some noticeable changes in other ways. So certainly from a performance perspective, but also like how our clothes fit, measurements, stuff like that. So I do really, really, really always want to encourage runners to shift their focus away from the scale and to shift it more to thinking about body composition and the steps that we can take to optimize body composition. Will that be the leanest, i.e. lowest body fat percentage that like you could ever imagine for yourself? Well, maybe not, right? Again, we have to be realistic the same way we have to be realistic about weight and what number on the scale is appropriate for us. But if we think about the steps to weight loss, it's energy deficit, right? And that can be very tricky to navigate, especially in the context of being a runner. If, though, we think body composition changes, body composition improvements, now all of a sudden we have all of these things that we can do, things that we can focus on, right? Like strength training, like fueling and really optimizing our fueling strategy so we can recover, so we can train harder. Like all of these things, we have so much more control and an ability to actually make a difference rather than just being create an energy deficit and hope for the best, because that may not always pan out once we start getting into low energy availability and, of course, all of those metabolic adaptations that we want to avoid. So at the end of the day, most runners that I coach, a lot of runners that I coach, come to me with a goal of, weight loss / body fat loss while they're getting ready for a race. And I know at the end of the day, most of those people don't actually care about the number on the scale. It really is about like how we perform, how we feel, how your clothes fit, like all of that stuff. And I think that so many of us agree that it isn't about the number, but we keep coming back to the number because we just don't know what else to focus on, right? We don't know how to shift our focus away from weight loss and what to think about or what to do instead. So I hope today I was able to give you a framework for understanding how we can shift our thinking away from just being focused on the scale. Some things to think about instead, the steps to get you there, how to make sure that you are really focused on performance, of course, being patient, and then allowing that hard work to kind of pay dividends, not just in this training cycle, like not just thinking short term, the next like 3 to 4 months, but really long term, your overall health and fitness, your overall performance, for many, many training cycles to come, hopefully. So if you listen to this episode and you want more information, you want more help and guidance from me, figuring out what that looks like for you, maybe that's in terms of a fueling plan. I talked a lot today about wanting a personalized, optimized fueling strategy that's kind of, specific to your needs and goals. This is something that I would love to help you get set up with so that you can understand exactly how to eat no matter the training cycle volume of running you happen to be doing. The other thing that, of course, I would love to help you with is a training plan. So if you are getting ready for a race and you want to make sure that you're running in a way that is also supporting optimal performance, getting you the best possible results, not overdoing it, increasing your risk of injury, things like that, then I would love to help you out. So you can find out more. I do offer both one-on-one coaching for runners, both nutrition and run coaching, as well as I have a fantastic online program for runners called the Fuel Train Recover Club. And this program actually includes everything that you need to optimize your running performance. Of course, there is plenty of information in there about improving body composition as well. So we have tons and tons of discussions about in the club. You can find out more information about all of that by finding the links in the show notes. So both my one-on-one coaching and the Fuel Train Recover Club, the links are there in the show notes, or you can visit my website. That's www.stephanienatchek.com. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today, spending a little bit of time with me unpacking this, hot topic of weight loss and marathon training. I hope that I gave you some clarity, gave you some things to think about, helped you understand where you might be struggling, where you might be frustrated, so that you can really, break out of this cycle, stop feeling stuck, and move forward. All right. That is it for today. We will catch you right back here for next week's all new episode. Bye for now. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.